Hello, guys. As usual, I am nothing. There we go. I'm nothing but a professional streamer here. Hello, ghosts and ghoulies. We're back for another spooky live stream. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic Monday. For me, it's Monday, and so I was like, you know what? We're gonna go back and watch spooky shit again because I like spooky shit. And I will be interspacing it with, creepypastas. What I've been doing is I've actually been um looking at some of them, a few of them. And so we'll take a look at some of them today on stream and read a few. And of course we'll watch these little haunted TikToks that I have. Now some of you probably already seen some of these because they've been up on my channel for a while, but you know what? Let's just watch them anyway. So let's have some fun. Watch some spoopies.
Amy? 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 Amy?
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my.
By the garden of the willow tree.
Hey everyone, I just want to let everyone know that Eb and I are okay. We're staying at my son's house. We've been there for weeks now.
As if you guys didn't expect me to put some troll ones in there.
I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to stay there, but I was going to go tomorrow to the house to pick up some stuff that we desperately need, and I get this weird ring notification, and I'm, I'm at a loss for words. Come on, man. Shit. I know, bud. I'm not afraid, man. Come on out, man. Oh, fuck yes, fuck yes. Hello.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Amy. Amy. Amy.
Oh, I'm playing hide and seek.
All right, so we moved on to the second one, but let's go and read a creepypasta real quick. So let me just turn back on my music because I like my music. Just turn down a little bit. Get some ambiance going on in here. All right, there we are. All right, so the first story we're going to be reading today is titled September 17th, 2010. And it is on the Creepypasta Wiki, and it was Pasta of the Month. So, I mean, it's got to be good if it was Pasta of the Month, right? Can I even hear my music? I can't hear it. Just a little bit. There we go. And since there's nobody in here, I'll figure this out. I'll see if I'll listen to it on replay, see if it's too loud. If not, if it is, then I'll turn it down for next time. All right. So, September 17th, 2010. A couple of months ago, I began my classes at Chico State University. As I was preparing for my freshman year, I was able to find everything that I needed, except for a laptop. I'm not exactly very good at letting a dollar go for something, especially when I could get that something for less. I scoured the internet for good deals on laptops, finding none that suited my frugal habits. Classes were only 2 weeks away, and I was becoming desperate for a computer. Several days later, I saw an ad in the newspaper for a laptop that was being sold for only $600, and it not too far from where I live. It was a very nice Dell laptop, too. Something odd that it was being sold for almost 1,000 less than store price. I, dro- I drove to the seller's address the following day. Oh, let me just interrupt real quick and we'll put the link to the story in the chat. That way, anybody on the replay can read through it as well. I drove to the seller's address the following day. The house was farther out of the city, butting up to a dense forest. Outside of the house was an old Chevrolet and a mess of old signs and other various vintage-looking items. I rang the doorbell, and a thin man in a flannel jacket came to the door. When I asked about the laptop, he looked almost relieved and told me he was ready to sell it immediately. Luckily, I came with the cash in hand, and after proof of good condition, I went home with a new computer. Excited to have my first self-bought laptop, I powered it up and began uploading my own programs and applications onto it. Upon searching the hard drive, I found a folder hidden away on it, which was odd because the man selling it told me that the memory was wiped clean and ready for a fresh start. The folder was titled September 17th, 2010, or 9/17/10, presumably a date. I opened the folder revealing 6 videos and 3 pictures. Now, of course, curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to watch the videos. The first video was simply titled 001. The video was shot from a shaky camcorder inside of a vehicle, recording a woman walking out of a bar and getting into her car at night. After a couple of seconds, the woman drove off, and almost immediately, the person recording the video began to drive after her. The video ended after 24 seconds. It almost seemed like the cameraman had been waiting for the woman for a while. Come to think of it, I wasn't too alarmed by this at the time, just a little unsettled. I opened the next video file, titled 002. Fabulous naming here. I assumed that this was the next part of the first video. My assumption was right, as it began with the camera on top of the console, facing out of the windshield. It was raining now, leading me to believe that this was a short while after the first video ended. I could barely make out the vehicle 2 cars ahead of this one was, sorry. I could barely make out that the vehicle 2 cars ahead of this one was the same car that the woman had left the bar in. This was this went on for an unsettling 47 seconds before the camera cut out. I began to get a little nervous, fearing that this might take a turn for the worst, but as if I was watching a television show, I wanted to see where this was headed. Not totally concerned yet, I decided to press on. The third video was, of course, titled 003. This was the one this was the one that got me officially concerned. The clip began from the same shaky hands as the first clip. It was now pouring rain outside of the car, and I could barely make out a figure in a fur coat with an umbrella walk into the front door of a house. I could only assume who this person was and who this house belonged to. The figure entered the house and closed the door. The following stillness greatly unnerved me. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of rain dumping on the top of the car. After roughly 2 minutes of this nerve-wracking nothingness, the lights inside of the house cut out. After a minute or so went by before the camera was placed onto the console again, and the sound of a person exiting the car broke the stillness. After the car door quietly closed, another figure, this time hooded, could be seen walking towards the door. I began to feel a knot tightening in the bottom of my stomach as the stranger walked around the back of the house. Whoever this person was, they definitely weren't supposed to be there. After another couple of seconds, the lights to the outside of the house cut out. It was pitch black, and only the rain alerted me that the camera was still rolling. The video ended after about 9 minutes of rain and darkness. I was now pretty sure that this was not an innocent little project or anything of that nature, and I began to feel stupid for not checking this laptop seller's credibility. Was this the person stalking the woman? Was this person stalking the woman the same person that I met earlier? Throughout the whole experience, I had a dormant thought in the back of my head to call the police, but I wasn't ready just yet. Reluctantly now, I began the fourth video, 004. It was dark again, but the rain had stopped, and I was left with only silence. Not long after the clip began, I could make out the sound of footsteps on gravel, getting louder as someone was approaching the vehicle. The car door opened, and the dome light was turned on, and I could tell that the camera was now on the floor of the car, pointing up towards the roof. I heard some fumbling in the background, and suddenly a thump sounded from the back of the truck. An arm abruptly obstructed an arm sorry, an arm abruptly obstructed the view of the camera, or the camera's view, and a large tarp could be seen being pulled out from the car. I had only one scenario running through my head, and I hoped that it wasn't true. The person picked up the camera and put it back onto the console and began to back up. They drove for a good 3 minutes before parking at a branched off road and exiting the car to work on the load that they were carrying. 6 minutes after, the car was moved again to a different location, and the camera was picked up and carried underhanded away from the car. I could see now that it was the same shit bucket truck that was in front of the seller's house. I was about ready to call the cops on this creep when the camera turned towards the house. It was a completely different house than the one I visited. I was a little relieved by this, though it didn't prove anything. As the fourth video came to an end, I was wondering whether or not I was prepared to see what came next. I could only hope that this was a prank, or at least had a happy ending. 005 began inside of the house. It was extremely dark, and the only thing I could make out was a figure that would occasionally walk in front of the camera. It was also quiet for the first few moments, minus the occasional barking of a dog outside. Eventually, a small sound started to appear. The small sound soon escalated into a loud, muffled scream. Shaking and struggling sounds became more apparent as time went on, as well as crying. A light abruptly came on, and the camera was lifted and panned to the center of the room, revealing a beaten and bloody woman tied to a chair. From what I can make out, this was, in fact, the woman from the bar. The camera zoomed in on her face for what seemed like an eternity before stopping. I couldn't believe that this was happening. The original hope that this was a movie or something like that had long since diminished. With only one video remaining, I was beginning to fear for my own safety. I locked my door, closed my blinds, and pushed onward. I began 006 with a small hope that this woman was still alive and that I could have her saved. The final installment of this horror show began in a bathroom setting. The camera was placed on the counter, facing a mirror, in which I could see a door. The only sound I could make was a familiar sound that destroyed my hopes. Power tools. I sat in front of the screen for what felt like hours before the sound stopped. More silence, then heavy footsteps, accompanied by what sounded like something being dragged. The doorknob turned and the door was pushed open. Out of the darkness of the rest of the house appeared a middle-aged woman dressed in what I can only describe as lab attire, sporting a respirator and a pair of long rubber gloves. This, for some strange reason, gave me a small amount of relief. In the reflection, the woman struggled to drag something to the bathtub. As she hoisted into the tub, I could see that it was a large, black garbage bag. I felt like I was dreaming. It was like I was watching a horror movie unfolding on the screen. She lifted up the bag from the tub, now empty, except for whatever entrails it still dropped out. She picked up the camera and placed it on the ground, facing the tub. On the floor in front of the bathtub was an assortment of corrosive substances and several other empty containers. The woman began to dump the liquids into the tub, which was followed by an awful, awful noise that I can only describe as pop rocks mixed with coke. The video ended, and I was left bewildered and panicked. I finally opened the pictures. The first was a picture of the truck. The second was a picture of a girl, tied up, before she was beaten. And the third picture brought up a corrupted file notice. But maybe that's a good thing. I managed to keep the two pictures before I handed the laptop over to the police. I was reimbursed my $600, along with a bonus. Apparently, the victim was the young girlfriend of the older woman's ex-husband. The older woman was arrested almost a year before, but was freed of all charges due to lack of evidence, and the ex-husband was incarcerated instead. I guess this was the missing link. I hope this has solved any unanswered questions, although I'm not sure who the man in the flannel jacket was, or how he got a hold of the laptop, or how he owns the same truck as the murderer. I guess I'll just leave that to the police. Well, there you go. What'd you think of that one? That was pretty nice. So now we will go back over to our haunted TikToks and play some more.
With who?
My friend Mabel.
Oh, okay. Would you want to play hide and seek with me?
Sure.
Okay, now you can play the real person, so I'm going to actually look for you, and I'm going to do all the counting, okay?
Alright.
Okay, and you're going to be the one hiding.
Alright.
Okay, ready? I'm going to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What? Turn off the lights, cheating. There we go. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here I go. Better be in a good spot. Where are you? Ariana. Could you be in the closet? Gotcha. Ariana. 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 Ariana? Ah, I see you behind the dresser. What the? Rihanna?
You found me.
Oh, what?
Did Mabel tell you where I was?
What? Let's get out of here. Come
Mom? Mom, what's wrong? Mom? Mom, what's wrong? Mom, are you okay, Mom? Mom? She's gone. Mom? Mom? Honey, what's wrong? Mom!
You don't want to be filmed, right? Whatsoever. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
No, I definitely feel spiritual nothing. Is your child here today?
She's with her friends right now at the house next door. Do you hear that?
Okay. I feel somebody here with us.
Okay.
I would definitely give some sort of special guidance to your child with very arranged people around. Something with her soul that they would come to cling to them. To protect them. Give her some praying or rosaries or something. I feel it very crazy.
Yeah. Do you hear it right now? Can you
It
say
was a man or something. He didn't talk. That's
holy?
it. I'm leaving. It's too demon for me. It's too much. There's good in demonic, but there's too evil. I'm out.
This is evil, you're saying? Should we leave
yes.
right now?
Yes.
Okay.
We need to leave.
Okay, alright.
We're leaving. Do not follow. You are not welcome. Do not.
All right. Well, welcome, Tangled Bliss. How you doing? How you doing, honey? All right. So we got to watch that one. And now we're going to read a classic, Barbie.avi. So, Barbie.avi. Hello. This thing happened to me a few months ago, and I just need to share it with somebody. It all started at my friend's party. He's an artist who rented out a loft in the industrial part of town. If you can picture what a place like Detroit looked like in the 1920s, that's what this area looked like. A bunch of old turn of the century factories crammed into 10 blocks, and most of them are abandoned. So I partied a little too hard that night and decided to crash on the couch at the loft. I woke up around 4 a.m. The sun wasn't out yet, but you could still make things out in the dim blue light. I went to the bathroom, carefully tiptoeing around the people that were passed out on the floor. As I was taking a piss, I tiptoed to look out the bathroom window and saw the panorama of deserted urban decay. I remember how much I liked places like this. It was so dark and devoid of life, and strangely serene. So I went back to the couch and tried to fall asleep. After 45 minutes of staring at the ceiling, I decided I didn't want to be there any longer. So I swallowed my pride and decided to wake my girlfriend up to beg her for a ride, since walking around the vacant streets at this time was not an option. Being an awesome girlfriend, she was totally cool with it and told me she would be there in about a half hour and that she would give me a call when she was outside. My phone died 10 minutes later, so I decided I would sit by the window and watch for her car. I sat there for a while and my eyes started getting heavy and I began to doze off. A crashing noise outside woke me up. It wasn't loud, but it was just enough to snap me into reality. I looked out the window and scanned the area, but I didn't see anything. Across the street from the loft, near a mountain of garbage bags and one of those enormous dumpsters, I see a computer and a monitor smashed against the floor that hadn't been there before. When my girlfriend arrived, I went downstairs and greeted her. Just as I was about to get in the car, I remembered a friend of mine who had blown out his power supply. So I decided to walk over to the dumpster and see what I could salvage. The monitor was worthless, but the tower seemed to have suffered almost no damage. So I put it in the trunk and we drove off. About a week had passed, and I completely forgotten about the tower until my girlfriend called to let me know that it was still in the trunk and that she wanted it out. That night I brought it home. Before I took it apart, I decided to hook it up to my monitor to see if it still ran. 1 second. Since we got some more people there. There's the story that I'm reading. See if it still ran, and to my surprise, it did. It ran Windows XP and it looked like it had been wiped clean. I decided to do searches for words like tits and pussy in hopes of finding some secret stash full of weird deviant porn that previous owners had forgotten about. More curiosity, I guess. Search came up with nothing. I searched for the files, nothing. Oh, I searched for picture files, nothing. And I searched for movies and one file came up. It was an AVI inside of a folder titled Barbie, hidden in the Windows/System32 directory. And so I played it. Now this is where it gets disturbing. The movie was about an hour long and was made up of what seemed to be like raw exported footage. The footage was of this woman sitting on a chair and talking against a white backdrop. I skipped through most of the movie, and it was all the same continuous shot. Then I decided to sit through the footage and find out what she was talking about. 15 seconds into the footage, the audio goes completely bad, and her voice is drowned in a harsh static/background noise, and I couldn't make out a thing. So I imported the footage into Final Cut and tried to mess with the levels to isolate her voice. It helped a little, but I still couldn't hear anything what she was saying. I was intrigued now. I began to really pay attention to her face and body language. It seems that she's being asked some kind of question because she stops at times to listen and then continues talking. About 15 minutes into the footage, her face begins to redden and contort, as if the questions are bothering her, but she continues to answer them anyway. Shortly after, she begins to cry. She stops hysterically for the duration of the film. One of the few words I can lip read was skin. She repeats this word many times throughout the footage, and at one point she even pulls at the skin from her arm and mouths the word. She seems to be unhappy with her skin. This is much more, there is much more I have to get off my chest. But it's getting late and I can't go on. I'll share the rest tomorrow. God save my soul. It kept on building and building. And about 40 minutes in, she's crying so hard she can barely look at the camera. She stops talking at this point, and the rest of the footage is just her crying with her head down. Oddly enough, she doesn't get up or move. The screen just fades to black. I was fucking dumbfounded. I played the whole thing through many times that night, trying to find inflections and nuances in her movement that would reveal anything else about what was going on. I felt so dissatisfied. I wanted to know more. That's when I noticed that there was about 10 more minutes left on the timeline after the screen went black, and about 2 minutes in there was some footage. The footage was extremely shaky, almost unwatchable, and depicted a pair of legs walking along train tracks. My guess is that camera was accidentally left on as it was being carried somewhere. The person in this footage walks along the train tracks for about 6 minutes and then turns into the forest and walks over what looks like foliage flattened by a piece of plywood. The person continues on this makeshift plywood road until the movie clip ends. Now my heart started beating with excitement because there were old train tracks a few miles away that looked very similar to the one in this video. I had to check it out. So I called up my friend Ezra. He's 6'4", 250 pounds of mostly muscle. I convinced him to go on a little adventure with me. I'm no pushover myself, but I felt if I was to go wandering in the woods looking for God knows what, a little extra muscle couldn't help, or couldn't hurt. This whole idea of investigating this video had me so excited I couldn't sleep. The next morning was a sunny Saturday. I took my flashlight, my camera, and my 7-inch K-bar with a matte black finish and serrated edge and went to pick up Ezra. When I got to his house, he wasn't even awake. When I woke him, he pretty much told me to fuck off. I was already packed and I had mentally prepared myself to do this, so I decided to go through it without him. I parked my car at the train station, took my stuff, and hopped onto the tracks. After walking for about 2 hours, I saw a broken piece of plywood and my knees almost buckled with excitement. I searched the nearby foliage, and there it was, a little plywood trail leading into the forest. I slowly walked along the trail, paying close attention to everything. I would stop occasionally, kneel down, and listen for anything or anyone. But it was so quiet. This was one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done. I didn't know what to expect at the end of this trail. The dense tree line gave way to a little island of grassy field, and then I saw it, a house being consumed by the forest. From the looks of it, no one had lived there for maybe 20, 30 years. I got my camera and snapped a few pics. A few yards away from the house was a tool shed made of rusty sheet metal. I just sat there among the trees for a while, absorbing everything. I didn't go into the open field. I had this bad feeling that something would see me. It took me a while to muster the courage to come up to the house. The door was partially opened. I pushed it in with the flashlight and was relieved that inside was actually well lit. I put my flashlight away, got my camera, and took a few more pics. There was no furniture. The floor was riddled with bricks and wood and rubble, and some of the walls had huge holes in them. When I went in further to explore, I saw some things that I didn't pay much mind to in that moment, but now that I think about them in hindsight, it greatly disturbed me. The first thing that seemed a little odd was that one of the doors in the first room that I presumed led to the basement seemed a little too new to be in this house. It was also the only door in the house that was locked. Also, when I made my way up to the second floor, I saw some chairs and a fold-up table that also seemed a little too new to be there. But what disturbed me the most was for some reason, was the bathroom. The dust on the mirror had been wiped away, and in the bathtub I saw a clear plastic tarp that had water droplets on it from when I presumed it was washed clean. But when I heard something moan really loud, that's when I jumped the fuck out the second story window and ran back to the tracks. Halfway there, I realized the moaning was most likely a water pipe expanding and contracting. And that little moment of relief gave into the horror which I felt when I wondered why the water why the water would be running on an abandoned house in the middle of the fucking woods. It's been a little more than 2 months since this happened. I haven't gone back there. Nor do I plan to. Well, there you go, guys. Ooh. Another creepy pasta. All right, so let's watch this. Okay, this compilation is from specifically an account on TikTok called Mr. List Paranormal, and he seems to have a lot of these ghost videos on his account. So that's where I mostly got these from. So, okay, I can see we got some more people. Hey, Blondie. Hey, Mama T. How you guys doing today? We're gonna watch some spooky shit.
Going for a walk and I look up and I see my neighbors. The hell?
Tiptoe through the window, by the window, that is where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Oh, tiptoe from the garden, by the garden, of the willow.
It's room 209. Amy says nobody's checked into that room, and there's reports of screaming coming from that room. Amy, he's on his way down there right now. What's going on, John? There's no one checked into that room. There should be nobody in there. Wait 1 second, John. Amy, are you there? Yeah, John says he hears the screaming coming from that room. And I hear it too. But we're sure that no one's checked into that room. Correct? John, just wait. We're gonna get a hold of the police. So I would wait for the police, John. Amy, John's gonna enter the room real quick just to check, make sure, see what's going on. Wait one. John? John, are you there? Okay, Amy, John wants you to call the police right now if you don't mind. He says no one's in there, but that all of the furniture's been turned upside down and the hold on. He says the carpet's been ripped up and that the shower is on, but nobody's in there. Man, that's scary. I'm officially freaked out now.
tell me I'm a fucking crack. Every time I turn off the light, there's like a shadow there. Watch. See that? What the fuck? What the fuck? Tell me I'm not a fucking crack, dude. Hell no. What the fuck, dude? I'm out of here. Ma.
All right. Hey, did you guys enjoy that? All right. So we're gonna move this over here. Nope, 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 nope. Oh, let's see. He's just not wanting to cooperate. Hold on a second. There, add that. There we go. All right. All right. So, the next story we're going to be reading is My Roommate is Into Some Weird Fairy Shit. So, let's see what kind of fairy shit they're into, shall we? My roommate is into some weird fairy shit. And these aren't the cute little human dragonflies with flower petals for clothes and sweet smiles. I don't know about you guys, but when I think fairies, I'm picturing something like Tinkerbell. Yeah, I know, she's technically a pixie. Sue me. And it is not the shit my roommate is fucking with. I noticed she was weird when I moved in. She was advertising for a roommate on Craigslist, and she said she'd need someone who was open minded, who was alright with strange people coming and going at all hours, who wouldn't ask questions about things that didn't involve them, and who would be okay with sharing a bathroom. Yeah, okay, not ideal. But I didn't need ideal. I needed livable. And honestly, I didn't really give a shit what she did in her spare time. Hell, she could have been cooking meth in her room. As long as she didn't get me involved in her drug deals, I wouldn't have given a shit. Turns out she wasn't dealing drugs, unless she was sharing marijuana with her deadbeat friends or something. Instead, she was into the occult, supernatural stuff, conspiracy theories. She believes in anything and everything. She gets convinced she's seen Bigfoot. She was, excuse me, she was abducted by aliens when she was 10 years old. She doesn't get vaccines because the government is using them to control people's minds. You know, that kind of stuff. Is it terrible for me to say that I kind of like her? I mean, let's make no mistake here. She's fucked in the head. But she's actually a really good roommate. Pays her bills on time, cleans up after herself, asks me before having her weird gatherings and rituals and shit. Whenever she buys groceries, she grabs my favorite candy bar for me. And at least she's interesting. I'd rather sit and talk to her for an hour than listening to Nancy from work describe her latest MLM adventures. And if you know what MLM is, it's multi-level marketing. The Illuminati on YouTube does a lot of coverage on multi-level marketing schemes. Great channel to watch. And before you argue with me, Stella, that's the name my roommate chose for herself, I guess. Doesn't vote. So it's not like her weird ass opinions and beliefs hurt anyone. She told me once she thinks that if you enter a voting booth, the government will put you to sleep, embed your skin with a mind altering chip or mind reading chip, and release you back into society. You won't have any memory of what happened. And that it happened to her mom, and that's why her mom believes in evolution. Right. Anyway, so life with Stella wasn't terrible. We got along okay for the most part, and we managed to live together for 6 months before her weirdness started to get a little too close for comfort. And what do I mean by that? Well, one morning I woke up to mold growing in a ring in our living room. Seriously, it was a huge ass ring. Our living room is actually pretty sizable, especially since Stella doesn't believe in furniture, so it's practically empty except for her weird candles everywhere. It never bothered me, since I don't use the common spaces that much anyway. but mold growing in my apartment was definitely not okay. Stella, what the hell is this? I asked. Stella was sitting at the edge of it, a mountain of books next to her. I saw a few titles straight away: Mists of the Fae Folk, Fairies and Other Creatures, The Magical Arts. In her hands was a book on botany, which was extremely peculiar in that moment, not so much so in hindsight.
It's a fairy ring. Or at least it will be,
She said, a small frown on her petite lips as she pored over her book. I bit back the urge to scream. I don't know what a fairy ring is, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't belong in our fucking living room. If you don't get it out of here, so help me God. Stella sighed and put her book down.
I thought you'd say that,
She said, reaching into the black messenger backpack at her side and pulling out a slightly crumpled envelope. She always had that bag on her, and I often saw her pull out any number of weird things from it. So you can understand that I was a little hesitant to take the envelope from her. But I did, and I opened it, and immediately my frayed nerves were soothed. $500 in cash will do that to a person.
for the inconvenience,
She said, going back to her book without a second glance at me.
and if we get in trouble with the landlord, I'll pay for any damages.
I knew our landlord wouldn't bother coming around and checking. He didn't give a shit when anyone did in those apartments anyway. So I was more than happy to let it slide, as long as that shit didn't start growing in my room. I wonder where she got all that money, though. Stella was never short on cash, even though she didn't have a job, at least not that I could tell. Oh well, never look a gift horse in the mouth. I shrugged my shoulders and let it go. That night, before I went to bed, I googled fairy rings. I only read for about 5 minutes before I got bored and gave up on it. Do you know how much has been written about these things? Too fucking much. Anyway, I figured out two very important things. First, many cultures believe that fairy rings are caused by fairies or pixies dancing in a circle. Second, mortals absolutely should not fuck with them. Now, I wasn't worried. Not only did I not believe in fairies, but I was also pretty sure you couldn't just grow your own fairy ring. I figured that Stella would lose interest in it after a few weeks, like she always did with her random obsessions. Then she'd get rid of it and life would continue as normal. Before that had a chance to happen, however, the fairy ring grew. After a few days, it had sprouted mushrooms. I shit you not, literal mushrooms were growing in my living room. Stella seemed overjoyed with this arrangement. I was pretty grossed out because our room was starting to smell damp and musty and just gross. I really wanted to yank up that carpet and scrub all that nasty crap away. But I focused on the $500 I was getting for being cooperative and tried to will away my annoyance. Stella's excitement grew over the next few days until it spilled over into a few conversations we had.
It's almost ready. They'll be here soon. I can feel it,
she said one night while we were having a beer. She was sitting in the middle of the circle while I stayed far outside of it. Not out of superstition, but because I wasn't going near that nasty thing. Are you sure that's how it works? I asked. My skepticism must have been obvious because her response was just on this side of indignant.
I've done my research, Janice. It's just like that movie. What was it? If you build it, they will come. Just like that. I've made the ring. They won't be able to resist dancing in it. It's just how it works.
I wasn't convinced, but hell, why not? It's not real anyway, so who cares if she thinks it works? So, what happens afterwards? She looked confused.
After what?
After the fairies show up, I said. What happens? Do you talk to them, trap them, ask them to grant you a wish? What? She stared at me in utter bewilderment for a second and then burst out laughing.
God, Janice, you're so funny sometimes,
she said. I chose not to press the point. Instead, I finished my beer and went to bed. Things played out about how I expected over the next week or so. Stella obsessed with her fairy ring. I cycled between ignoring it and indulging her. And eventually, her interest started to wane and she began to turn her attention to other things. I noticed a few books on the Jersey Devil appearing around the apartment, so I figured that's what would plague my life next. I felt like I was living in some sort of sitcom. And then, 3 weeks ago, something different happened. I woke up around 4 in the morning, my sleep disturbed by a strange blue glow coming from under my door. I stumbled out of bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes as I went in search of the light source. As soon as I entered the living room, I was almost blinded by the blue light assaulting my eyes. I swore to myself as I shielded my face, trying to let my eyes adjust. Eventually they did, and I was able to take in the terrible sight of what that awaited me. Stella danced naked in the fairy ring. Her body twisted and jerked, almost like she was being pulled along. She stumbled but didn't fall, going round and round so quickly it made me dizzy. I started to walk towards her, confused and somewhat unsettled. Was she on acid or something? I almost went back to my room and pretended I hadn't seen anything. And then the blood caught my attention. It oozed from cuts all over her body. A ring of blood was crusted around her wrists. Slashes across her abdomen resulted in red rivulets tracing paths down her legs. Finally, I saw her face. Her eyes were fixed on me, and a shudder worked its way down my spine. Her face was twisted in agony, her mouth a grimace, her eyes red with tears. Snot was running out of her nose. She was heaving for breath, and I was sure, so sure I saw her scream. Except there was no sound. Nothing at all. I couldn't hear the sound of cars passing by on the road outside, the sound of her feet on the carpet, the sound of her breathing. It was like I was trapped in a vacuum. But then again, I didn't really need to hear what she was screaming. I could read it on her lips like the words had been printed there. Help me, help me, help me, help me. My body responded to her silent plea, and I lunged at her, hand outstretched, intent on wrenching her from the circle. But then she just disappeared, vanished in front of my eyes as though she'd never been there. I tripped and fell to my knees just outside the ring of glowing blue mushrooms that dotted the floor. Slowly, before my eyes, the glow faded to nothing until I was alone in the dark. Just me, the silence, and the knowledge that Stella was not coming back. I called the police, of course. That's what you do, right? Never been in a situation quite like that before. I knew I couldn't tell them what I saw, so I just told them that when I woke up, she was gone, and that was rare for her, that I was worried something had happened. They declared her missing. I steered clear of the living room. I wanted to get out of there as fast as humanly possible, so I booked a hotel room until I managed to find another place. I didn't give a shit about breaking the lease or forfeiting security deposit on the apartment. I just wanted out. I got a place pretty quickly, a real dump of a studio apartment, but it's affordable, and built up my courage to go back to our apartment and pack up my few things and go. And when I opened the door, God, no matter how long I live, I'll never forget this. When I opened the door, she was there, lying there, in the middle of the fairy ring. The cuts had deepened into permanent grooves in her body. She was thinner than before, as if someone had sucked the flesh out of her, tightened her skin until it was tough and leathery. In fact, she almost looked like she'd been mummified. Her eyes were gone, her teeth were gone, her mouth was still gaping open, still screaming for someone, me, to help her. As I stared at her body, I swear to God, a faint giggle coming from somewhere in the apartment. I think I'm done with roommates for a while. So, there we go. That one is called My Roommate is Into Some Fairy Shit. Here is a link to the story. So now we will go back over to the scary TikToks. And this one you guys might have seen if you caught Carrie's video, or if you caught Carrie's stream from the other day, where she was just insomniac and didn't want to go to bed. This is from a TikToker named Soul Mori. Soul Mori collects haunted dolls. Now, whether you believe they're haunted or not, or you think it's just her tricking out, then that's your decision. But she collects all these old haunted dolls. and it's really an interesting account to watch. So if you do get a chance to go on TikTok, look up Soul Mori, and she's real cute. She's real cute. She's adorable. And just her experiences talking about her haunted dolls is just absolutely fascinating to me.
Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity.
Are you related to the original Annabelle doll? One of my new dolls just moved right in front of me when I was talking, so I want to see if I can get it on camera. Hello. Oh my god. Hi. Hi. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't believe I just got that on camera. Wow. I think I've made a huge mistake. So, I'm a haunted doll collector, and today I visited an antique store, and they had so many dolls. I didn't really feel any energy from any of them until I saw this one. Straight away, when we locked eyes, I felt an intense energy radiating from this doll. I purchased this doll and took them home to the rest of my collection. However, when I was looking at this doll, I realised I know you from somewhere, and then it hit me. This doll is the male counterpart to the doll The Conjuring was based off of. And the lady who owned the store said something that now really stands out to me. She said she got this doll from the States, in Connecticut, which is where the original Annabelle doll comes from. So I've just come into the doll room to check on my haunted dolls, and I've noticed that Primrose is just totally broken. Her eye has literally fell out and her head is smashed. Rosemary's fine, but Primrose is just totally broken. I just have no idea how this has happened. Wait, what?
All right, so let me read you guys one more story before we get off for the afternoon. And this one is called Why Sarah Never Sleeps. There are too many doors in the upstairs hall. Sarah told her parents, but they couldn't see it. They told her not to worry. They told her there was nothing there. But there was an extra door at the end of the upstairs hall, an extra yellow door, and it didn't belong. It was the color of disease, jaundiced and infected, with spidery black veins across its face. One perfect silver knob gleamed in its center, above a shadowy keyhole, and it didn't look right. The doorknob shone with a mirror's finish, and it caught the light from any angle, begging for Sarah to look its way. Sarah did her best to ignore it, but the door knew her name, and it it whispered it when she drew near. The door would rasp with a voice like dried leaves, as tiny claws scraped against the other side. Tears would well in Sarah's eyes as she'd hurried past, her arms laden with everything she'd need to get ready for the day. It would again call before she'd shuffled out of the range and closed the bathroom door, cutting off its paper-thin walls. When she'd creep from the bathroom to head downstairs, the door's voice would follow her with a furious flurry of scraping claws and tormented howls. They lingered and gnawed at the back of her mind as she'd rush through breakfast so she could leave the house a few minutes sooner. School became a blessing, an excuse to be someone somewhere else. At school, she could forget the door. At school, she could pretend her house was like everyone else's, with the right number of doors and no eerie whispers. But at the end of the day, it was still waiting for her at the end of the upstairs hall, with its mirror ball knob and yellow face. She hated coming home and knowing it was there, but even more than that, she hated going to sleep, because in her dreams, she opened the door. Every night she stood before it, fighting the urge to reach out. Dread knotted in her belly in anticipation of pain, when her hand rose anyway to grasp the silver knob. Some nights it burned her like the driest ice. Other nights it seared like a red-hot coal. Very occasionally it did neither, instead turning and turning without ever opening the door, and she couldn't stop turning it until she woke up. When the door did open, it revealed a swirling vortex of shadow and sound, with 1,000 voices crying in the darkness. The voices curled around her, crawling through her hair like spiders. She thrashed and swatted at their skittering whispers, but the words still tangled across her skin. She never should have listened. He sees, they said. He hears, they moaned. He hungers, they wept, and burrowed into her mind like words. The Hollow Man, the Hollow Man, they echoed in her mind and screamed to her from the gaping vortex. The Hollow Man, he hunts. Sarah shot up with a scream that night, gasping and sweating, but alone in her bed. The clock's crimson face said midnight had passed, but not by much. The darkness enveloped her room.
except where a vestigial nightlight illuminated the corner by her desk. And it wasn't much, but she felt better when she saw it. She pulled the bed sheets over her head and pushed away the echoing voices. I'm fine, she swore, hugging her knees and rocking. It's just a dream. They're always dreams. Dreams will go away like they always do. She started humming a song her mother used to sing when Sarah was smaller, small enough to need the nightlight, and the panic faded away little by little with every note. It's just a dream, she repeated. Just a dream. Just a. Sarah? Someone whispered from the hall. Sarah froze. Sarah. Are you Sarah? It was the voice of a girl, not much younger than Sarah, and not at all like the voice she usually heard from the door at the end of the hall. Who who are you? Sarah whispered back from beneath the sheets. My name is Lizzie. Are you Sarah? Sarah didn't move. She was terrified of leaving the safety of her cocoon. As the moments ticked past, however, an anxious curiosity emboldened her enough to peek out from the covers. What if it was another girl, she thought. She sounded just as scared as Sarah felt. Sarah crawled from her bed, clutching the sweat-damp nightshirt she'd worn to sleep, and waited. When nothing happened, she stood up and tiptoed towards her bedroom door, toward the waiting yellow door with the mirror ball knob on the wall at the end of the upstairs hall. When she stood before it, her stomach lurched. For a moment, she couldn't tell if she was going to vomit or faint. Please, the door said in a young girl's voice when Sarah got close. Please, are you Sarah? Sarah opened her mouth to answer, but her voice was a tiny squeak of nothing. She pressed her palms to her cheeks and smeared away the tears before trying again. Yes, she finally managed. I'm Sarah. Please let me in. The door's silvery knob shook violently, rattling as if locked and jostled by someone on the other side. Sarah stumbled back with a gasp, starting, staring at the shuddering alien doorknob. Let me in, Sarah, please. I can't stay here. Please let me. Please help me. Please let me in. Sarah dropped to her knees when her legs gave out, and she screamed when she looked at the door, level with the shadowy keyhole below the rattling knob. She stared directly into a very human eye. Tears shimmered in the other eye. As they shimmered in Sarah's, it darted around wide and white with fear, as if searching through the hall. And then, without warning, the keyhole became shadow, and the silver knob stilled, and the girl on the other side began to cry. Please, Sarah, she pleaded. He's almost here. The Hollow Man? Sarah whispered, as a chill slithered up her spine. Lizzie sobbed quietly. Sarah scooted closer to the door, her fear growing colder, her fear growing colder when the girl from the other side didn't answer. Lizzie? Thank you. Silence fell, as if it had always been there. She couldn't hear Lizzie crying any more, and even the house was too quiet behind her. Sarah put her ear to the door and held her breath. She waited. Minutes passed, but it couldn't have been minutes. Nothing moved, nothing whispered, nothing cried, nothing stirred. She couldn't hear anything but her own racing heart. Was she gone? Lizzie? She tried again, afraid the hollow man had taken her. He's here, Lizzie whispered at last, almost in her ear, as those Lizzie's lips pressed tight against the keyhole. Please, let me in. Sarah's heart ached. The world was a little fuzzy around the edges, and it was harder to focus than before. She had to stand up. She didn't dare touch the sickly door, but her legs felt too wobbly and weak to support her. She reached for the knob with a trembling hand. Please, Sarah. Lizzie's voice was getting smaller. Please. Grasping the mirror ball knob, she pulled herself up from the floor. It moved noiselessly beneath her hand, gliding without resistance.
and opened the yellow door. A lonely expanse of normal wall inched into view, and she felt sick. She worried her thumb in confusion and extended a trembling hand to touch the wall behind the door. It was solid and as normal as the wall at the end of the upstairs hallway should be. But her stomach churned. She gently closed the door, which issued a soft click as the latch sprang into place, and waited. She hardly dared to move or breathe as she listened to the night, waiting for the door to speak again. Hours passed in oppressive silence, even though it couldn't have been hours, and the door had nothing to say. Sarah grew sleepy, too sleepy to keep standing, too sleepy to remember why she was standing so still at the end of the upstairs hallway. It was time to go to bed. It's just a dream, she remembered, turning away and rubbing her eyes. They're always dreams. Shuffling to her bed was like swimming through jello, and most of the way there she couldn't keep her eyes open. Luckily, she knew the way. The dreams will go away, like they always do. The crimson clock was broken when she rolled herself back in bed, its face declaring 12:16 a.m. at a room that only vaguely felt familiar. But she couldn't bring herself to care when her eyes and body felt so heavy. Sarah, Lizzie whispered, but it couldn't be a whisper. Sarah, Lizzie whispered. Sarah, don't wake up. Sarah groaned a little. Don't wake up, Lizzie said, her voice echoing in Sarah's mind. Sarah frowned and rolled onto her back. She didn't want to wake up. She wanted to stay asleep. Lizzie didn't need to tell her not to wake, because not being awake was the whole point of being asleep. For a long time, all was silence. Sarah's mind drifted, and she felt herself grow lighter, as if getting ready to float up through the blackness that surrounded her. She could feel the cool sheets beneath her, and then, for a moment, she thought she heard a papery thin rustle of leaves in her room. He's here, Lizzie whispered at last. Please, don't wake up. And who's here? Sarah wondered, as she steadily rose. It's a hollow face, an eerie mask, with a hollow voice that doors will ask to be invited in to bask above his favored midnight task. A strange tingling worked its way up Sarah's body as Lizzie recited the haunting rhyme in a distorting monotone. Clarity inched its way toward her slowly, melting away the fog of sleep. Hadn't she been dreaming? Wasn't she still dreaming? Something was wrong. He's waiting, inches from your face, to be the first thing your eyes grace. You keep them shut, or else embrace a hollow shell to take your place. Cold dread seized Sarah's heart with each new stanza, and she trembled with the weight of her mistake. For a moment, she swore she could feel the air stir above her, be stale and strangely warm against her cheeks. Leaves rustled above her bed. The yellow door you always keep, he follows you to where you sleep. Into your room he then will creep, your life in dreams for him to reap. Lizzie's voice became little more than a breath within Sarah's mind, and the air cooled around her when a pressure lifted from her chest. The leaves were in the hall. The hollow man above your bed, with hollow eyes, deep slumber fed, as hollow dreams may fill your head, but never peak, or you'll be dead. Everything was wrong. Distantly, Sarah registered the sound of her parents screaming in their room. She felt tears sliding on her cheeks, no longer dream tears, and she could feel the wet warmth as each one fell. Mommy, Sarah whispered, the sound paper thin. Daddy, she rasped with a voice like dried leaves. Lizzie? She thought, but Lizzie did not respond. Silence fell over the house. Sarah knew nothing would be right again. From the hall outside her bedroom door, Sarah heard the soft click as a latch sprang into place,
and waited. Silence filled the house again. The leaves were gone. Sunlight peeked through the curtains, and the crimson clock said it was 7:45 a.m. before she felt it was safe enough to open her eyes and leave her room. The yellow door, with its mirror ball knob, stared at her from the wall at the end of the upstairs hall, and the house was still too quiet. It was different quiet than before, though. A quiet different than her dreams. It was the quiet of a tomb. Except, of course, for the occasional tapping, as if from tiny claws, on the other side of the yellow door. And there we go. Why Sarah Never Sleeps. I'll leave the link in the chat. So, what'd you guys think? Fun? I know, it wasn't much. So yeah. So there we go. Another episode of Spooky Mondays. Going into the future, I do want to do a lot, focus a lot more. I do want to do like the spooky stuff on Mondays, since Tuesdays and Fridays will be raid nights in World of Warcraft. So, like I said in my live stream this morning at work, Fuck It Friday might be relegated to Shaw can't get her shit together Saturday. So that's probably going to happen because the raid nights are going to be from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and I want to be able to, do some, be able to relax a little bit after I get off work and not feel like I have to rush to do a live stream. So Tuesdays and Fridays and Sundays at least, I'll be live streaming the raid once it drops. Dragonflight is due to drop on the 28th of November, so the first raid should probably drop within the first or second week of December. And of course, I'll be going out of town around Christmas with my family, so I won't be there for that. But I'll keep Fuck It Friday until the raid actually drops, and until Dragonflight actually drops, we'll keep it on Fuck It Fridays. Like I said, if you guys want to send me anything that you might want to watch, either on Spooky Mondays or Fuck It Fridays, then you can use any of my social media links that are down in the description, or you can just you can throw me a DM on Discord, throw me a DM on Instagram, leave a comment on YouTube, anything you want in the replay of this. But going forward, that's going to be what I'm going to focus on. I like to do this. I like to be able to read the creepypastas and show the scary movies and everything else. So I still want to continue doing that. And then of course, we're going to be streaming the raid on Tuesdays and Fridays and Sundays. And of course, Saturday will be Shaw Can't Get Her Shit Together Saturday. So then we'll be able to watch our favorite Karens and entitled people and sovereign citizens. So I hope that'll be great going forward. Really appreciate everybody who's come out. And of course, the people who are going to be watching this on replay, I really appreciate you too. Don't think I don't appreciate you. And that will do it for and that will do it for this week's Spooky Mondays. Maybe next Monday will last longer. Who knows? Depends on how I feel. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you guys for coming out so much. And I hope to see you guys later in the week. Bye.